This episode of the Feed Podcast is brought to you by the Chicago French Market. The market offers fresh ingredients for cooking at home, delicious grab-and-go options for any meal of the day, or even a simple picnic or office party.
The Chicago French Market, a taste of Europe in the heart of the Midwest.
This episode of the Feed Podcast is brought to you by Oscar's Mexican Seafood. With 5 locations throughout the San Diego area, Oscar's focuses on Baja-style fish tacos, fresh ceviches, and hearty seafood burritos.
And all their salsas and agua frescas made on site every day. They'll even cater. For more information, oscarsmexicanseafood.com.
You're listening to the Feed Podcast. To get your weekly fix, subscribe to us on iTunes or visit our website, thefeedpodcast.com.
Everyone, not just Randy Newman, it seems, loves L.A. these days, especially the national food press. My God, the New York Times, Bon Appetit, Food and Wine, over and over. L.A. is the greatest food city, blah, blah, blah.
No, not all of them. Sometimes they pick Chicago for that.
Oh, I know. And like Condé Nast just picked Chicago, of course, too. Right. But, man, L.A. is getting a lot of love. Not just because of the great ethnic food they have, but some of the higher-end restaurants.
But like 30-some years ago, I lived in Los Angeles, and it was really at the top of the heap then. And then things just sort of mellowed out. And not anybody was talking about L.A. and its food scene for quite a while. And then things started turning around about 10 years ago, I think. That's what I would say. It's always been an amazing sort of ethnic food town. You could find just a little bit of everything, and it would always be really well done. But now it's got all levels of dining covered, and people are really excited about what's going on there, and I think with good reason.
For so long, Nancy Silverton and Wolfgang Puck.
Right.
And maybe in the last 5 years, Suzanne Goen.
Yeah.
But now, these places like Here's Looking at You and Kismet and Botanica and all these other little sort of twee Silver Lake places are coming along the scene, but they're actually really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's nice. There's a nice mix in this city, too. Although you're going to spend a lot of time in your car. But that's just a given.
That's what I was going to say. It's not an easy place to go.
Coming up on today's show, a taste of Los Angeles, from the high-end to the hardcore ethnic strip malls that get me truly excited. Stay with us. There's a lot more than just heirloom vegetables and bean curd in Southern California. This is the Feed Podcast. I'm Steve Dolinsky, a food and travel reporter at ABC 7 News, the Chicago Tribune, and Canada's Globe and Mail.
And I'm Rick Bayless, the chef and owner of Chicago's Frontera Grill, Topolobampo, Xoco, Leña Brava, and host of Public Television's Mexico One Plate at a Time.
And every week, the Feed takes a deep dive into the world of professional chefs, restaurateurs, food artisans, and drink experts, sharing their stories and uncovering their passion for food and drink. But that's not all. Rick and I are always traveling the globe for our jobs, eating, drinking, and immersing ourselves in the local culture. If we find something exciting along the way, you can be sure it's going to find its way here to our James Beard Award-winning podcast. Let's immediately dispel the stereotypes about L.A. Sure, there are juice bars and vegan-friendly cafes aplenty, but the City of Angels has been on the culinary map for quite a while, showcasing some of the best talent in the country. Seasons are fluid. It's actually just one season pretty much all the time, sunny and 70, so great produce is a year-round thing. There are amazing ethnic enclaves. Mexican, Korean, Chinese, and Japanese come to mind. But also more burger joints and donut shops than I have ever seen in one place. I will say I was there for a week with my son. He was attending a camp at USC, and we got an Airbnb near Koreatown. I think it was called Baldwin Hills, maybe? I'm not sure, but it was near Koreatown.
Koreatown is in L.A. proper, right?
Yeah.
On the way to downtown from, say, West Hollywood.
Yes, exactly. And so it's pretty central. And so it was, 15, 20 minutes to USC, which was south of us. It was maybe 15 minutes downtown.
Oh, nice.
You take Olympic all the way in. We weren't that far from West Hollywood. It was a little further to go to Silver Lake, and I found myself going up to Silver Lake quite a bit because there's a lot of the new restaurants there. But it was a nice location to be centrally located. One day I went to the beach, so that was a bit further. And frankly, there isn't that much exciting stuff going on like in Manhattan Beach. It's beautiful, but like restaurant-wise, it's kind of But I kind of liked being in the car for a couple days. I know that sounds crazy, but I kind of like driving around just seeing LA this way because I never get to explore it. I did notice, I don't know if you noticed when you're driving around there, donut shops and
Oh,
burger
they're
joints.
everywhere.
They're everywhere. And I kept asking.
But they have been for a really long time.
And it's so funny because people think, oh, L.A., you're so healthy and so health conscious. And there's like burger joints up the wazoo. And the donut shops, I mean, literally every other corner is a donut shop.
Yes.
Although the funny thing was when I asked the professionals and the critics, they couldn't really come to a consensus on where the best donut shop is.
Well, because a lot of those are chain kind of donut things, or ones that you buy a franchise for, and they give you a mix, and they tell you how to make donuts, and then you make donuts, and everybody eats them. But the quality, I mean, in terms of some sort of artisan-style donuts, that's not what they have a lot in L.A., certainly not as much as in New York or in Chicago.
They've actually had some, there's an import there from Portland, I think. Blue Star's there. And there's, of course, Randy's is the famous place. It's a very interesting subculture there. It's like, you know how a lot of times Korean immigrants work in dry cleaners or Indian immigrants working at 7-Eleven. A lot of the immigrants from Cambodia have gone into the donut business in L.A., which is kind of an interesting subset.
Yeah.
Well, I spent a week in L.A. recently, and I talked with a few professional eaters about what's going on right now. Besha Rodell has been the restaurant critic at LA Weekly for the past few years. We meet at Night Market Song in Silver Lake for an early Thai dinner. Within minutes, our table is groaning with oval plates of ground chicken larb and deep bowls of khao soi, my absolute favorite combo of crispy and boiled noodles, set into a tingly coconut milk curry crowned with red chili paste and pickled greens. I'm curious about chef and owner Chris Yenbam-Rung and how he got started.
He was born of a mom and pop joint. His parents owned a restaurant in West Hollywood that was a traditional Thai American mom and pop restaurant. And he kind of started the original night market almost as an art project in the side room of his parents' restaurant. And over time, it became more popular, and his parents wanted to retire. And only recently, actually, he took over the entire space that had been his parents' restaurant. And then he branched out to Silver Lake, and he's also on his way to the west side as well. He's about to open a third place.
It does seem like I keep hearing Silver Lake so many times. Squirrel is here, and Kismet is here, and this is like the Brooklyn or the Wicker Park, I guess, of LA? Yeah. I would say people say it's like the Williamsburg of LA. It's now ridiculously expensive, and people are being priced out of opening stuff here. Last night, my son and I went, I guess it's considered Koreatown. Here's Looking at You, which is this really nice little restaurant.
Yeah, Koreatown is amazing. And I would argue that in Los Angeles, more than almost any other city that I've lived in, the best eating is so far from the nicest neighborhoods. Like, there are a couple good restaurants in Beverly Hills, but not many, unless you want a steak. I mean, you can get a decent steak. Koreatown in LA, I think, is the best eating neighborhood in America, and that goes for Korean food. It's the best Korean food in America, but
fighting words.
I mean, it's just the breadth is how I could spend every day of my life eating 3 separate meals in 3 different restaurants there and never get through it all. From stuff like Here's Looking at You, which is a former guy who used to work at Animal, Beer Belly, which is one of the best kind of beer and gastropubby type of places in town. Koreatown is amazing.
I share a theory I have about LA with Rodell. Because the weather is so wonderful year-round and the produce so abundant, chefs don't need to get creative with heavy braised meats or slow-roasted root vegetables, since there is no scarcity, ever. Why preserve when next month will be as warm as this month?
That's an interesting theory, but it overlooks one major weirdness about Los Angeles, which is that we are obsessed with Italian food. And out of all of the openings that are happening this year, I would say 70% of them are Italian, and we're really into handmade pastas, we're really into ragu, we're really into, and that makes no sense to me at all. In fact, I'm glad that we have those things here. It's nice, but I'm really, at this point, it's been like 100 degrees for 3 weeks, and I have to review restaurants, and I have to go eat all this pasta. It's making me crazy.
The next morning, I head back to the same neighborhood to have brunch with Irene Verbila and Michaeline Busico. Verbila was the restaurant critic at the LA Times for 20 years, and Busico was with the Rob Report, a magazine for high net worth individuals. Both women now freelance for a number of publications. We're at Trois Familia, run by the local French chef, Ludo Lefebvre. I ask Irene what she's most excited about these days.
Right now, I'm really excited about a restaurant that's about to open in Silver Lake, which is on the east side of town, kind of an edgier neighborhood. And it's called Tintorera, which means blue shark, blue or leopard shark, and it's named after a kitschy Mexican shark hunting movie from 1977, and the chef is Michael Calderon, who has one of the top restaurants in Mexico City called Huset. So this is his first. It's only his second restaurant, really, and he and his partner are here because the partner had a tattoo artist in downtown LA, and Michael came along to see what was happening on the food scene, and they fell in love with LA and decided they wanted to open a restaurant here. It's going to be a modern Mexican seafood restaurant, and it's all garden.
We'll talk about where we just ate breakfast here. Kind of a well-known chef here in town, too.
Yeah, it is. It's Ludo Lefebvre, who has several restaurants around the city, and is also, one of the, I guess, the sort of leading creative chefs here, along with the partners he has, John Shook and Vinny Dotolo. I mean, the thing that I'm really liking about LA right now is there is incredible creativity. Almost wacky ideas, things like, where we went for breakfast just now, Trois Familia, French, Mexican breakfast place. I mean, it just sounds insane. But
we had crepe Suzette, we had a double taco with potatoes and cheese, we had a really crispy hash brown with some avocado and a poached egg.
That they were calling chilaquiles. No, I mean, it's like, so he brings a little French element, a little playful element into every dish. And my favorite restaurant of his is Le Petit Trois, which is just a bar, a counter with maybe 8 seats and a couple of places you can kind of perch on the edges, and he's just doing classic bistro food there, and I love it.
Just the most perfect omelet you've ever had, and just as Sherry said, the classics. They're also it's interesting. It is just a tiny place with just a few seats at a counter, but he's about to open a bigger version of it in Studio City in the Valley. So. The empire keeps expanding.
Anybody else here? I mean, for years it's been Nancy Silverton and of course Suzanne Goen more recently, but anybody else that people should know about outside of LA?
Yeah, absolutely. Joseph Centeno, who has a whole clutch of restaurants within about a block of each other downtown, all really different, all really, really delicious. Sherry,
he's done the perfect thing for an LA chef. He lives downtown. All his restaurants are within a couple of a block, so he can walk from one to the other and keep an eye on them. Each one is distinctly different.
What are their names? What's some of these?
He has a restaurant called Orsa and Winston, to a sort of a casual, global mashup place, Baco Mercat, which is named for his sort of signature sandwich called the Baco. Barama, which is sort of a Tex-Mex, or modern Tex-Mex.
He grew up in San Antonio, so he's doing his version, his chefly version of that, and it's rollicking and fun. PYT, it's vegetarian, but a vegetarian that carnivores can love. I mean, it's very polished and really interesting.
Thanks so much, both of you.
Coming up, a visit with a former journalist turned chef and restaurateur, now running a restaurant in LA. Then later, a Chinese food crawl through the San Gabriel Valley with the one and only Jonathan Gold. Stay with us.
Have a beef with something you heard? Looking for a little extra side dish? Let us know on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at The Feed Podcast.
Authentic fish tacos traditionally come from one place, Mexico's Baja Peninsula. In towns like Ensenada and San Felipe, fresh fish is battered and fried, then topped with crunchy cabbage crema, fresh avocado, and vibrant salsa. all tucked into warm corn tortillas.
You know better than everybody. I mean, this area down in San Diego, down on the way to the coast, I mean, that can be really special.
It's so beautiful, and the food is so good. I can't wait to get down there and eat these.
There's a lot of
tapas.
competition. You know,
Yeah.
Oscar's Mexican Seafood started out as a food truck in Tijuana, became a tiny shack in Pacific Beach, which is just north of San Diego. Now they've got 5 locations in and around the city, including the latest in Encinitas. Everything's fresh, never frozen, and they make their salsas and agua frescas fresh on site each day. For more information, visit oscarsmexicanseafood.com.
This episode of the Feed Podcast is brought to you by the Chicago French Market, a European-inspired marketplace in the heart of Chicago. Featuring more than 30 specialty vendors, the market offers fresh ingredients for cooking at home, delicious grab-and-go options for any meal of the day, or even a simple picnic or office party.
My name is Ariella, and I work at Pastoral at the French Market. We are a cheese, wine, and sandwich shop. All of our sandwiches are made to order. We have sandwiches and salads and sides and potato salad and orzo. We do cheese plates, make our own pimento spread that's super awesome.
Located in Chicago's West Loop with 2 entrances, 131 North Clinton and 118 North Canal, next to the Ogilvy Transportation Center. Covered parking is free for an hour with a $20 purchase. Open Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. until 7:30 at night. Saturdays, 8:30 until 5:30. Plus, free Wi-Fi. The Chicago French Market, a taste of Europe in the heart of the Midwest.
See behind-the-scenes photos and get additional information before other listeners. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/thefeedpodcast.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. We're talking about Los Angeles this week, and in our last segment, I spoke with a few critics and food writers about the local scene. And one area that kept coming up in our discussion was Silver Lake, partly because just a lot of places like Kismet and Botanica are making such a big deal about working with farms and doing very vegetable-forward menus. They really make a big deal about local produce there. The Santa Monica market is a big deal. I know people have written books about the Santa Monica market. But you were saying that that's maybe, I don't know, we should think about this differently.
You know, for the number of restaurants that use those small local farms, I would say that we have a greater percentage here in Chicago because we don't have commercial produce around here. And it's a fascinating thing to me that when I go to the Santa Monica Farmers Market, though I love being there because what they have for sale is so different than what we have here, that market is no bigger than the Green City Market here in Chicago.
And
in
say
fact,
bigger, you mean number of farmers.
producers.
Okay.
And then when you go into restaurants, the number of restaurants in Los Angeles that are really what I would call true farm to table, meaning like small artisan farm to table, is no more than what we have here in Chicago. And it's a much bigger city. And the thing is that because so much of their produce comes, or so much of the produce for the United States comes from that Central Valley in California, you could almost say that that's their local stuff. But it is just commodity produce. It's what we call commodity produce here in Chicago. And yes, it comes from California, but I don't think you can call it that, your local seasonal stuff, because it's produced in a different way, and the varieties that they're growing are different. And yes, the Santa Monica Farmers Market has some great local farms, and Harry's Berries cannot be beaten. And there's several different people that have great dates there, and we don't have any dates growing here. Or in the fall, you can always find a whole lot of citrus there, and that's something that's really cool to me. So I always go every time that I go to LA. But I would actually like to see, and I think it's happening, more of the small local artisan farms represented on the menus in
Los
Angeles.
Is it land? It's awfully expensive out there? People don't have the ability to do the farms that are close to LA because everything is so spread out. I mean, it would seem that, the climate is so superb, you could put a farm anywhere.
You could kind of put it, but it would cost you a lot of money.
Cost a lot of money.
And that's what I've heard from some of the farmers, because they'll sometimes have to drive 6 hours to get to that Santa Monica Farmers Market. So that makes it really hard for them, because it's just a huge spread out city, and there's not a lot of farmland still there, although there are a number of really good berry farms within the city limits, or what you would call LA proper.
And even if it's not far distance-wise, it can be long drive time because of the traffic issue. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Well, I spent the morning there one day meeting up with a former colleague of mine, Heather Sperling. She used to be the editor of Tasting Table here in Chicago, and After a brief stint in New York, she teamed up with another former journalist, Emily Pfiffer, the former editor of Daily Candy here in Chicago, and they opened up their own restaurant and market in Silver Lake called Botanica. They've also got a digital magazine, botanicamag.com. And I stopped by for a chat over a very healthy plate of local greens and some gazpacho.
After eating and observing professionally for so many years and then getting a little taste of building something through these pop-up food and design markets that Emily and I worked on in Chicago.
Dose and
then Fete. I sort of got this itch to build something physical, to do something that could be a gathering point for a community, that could be really intensely and semi-insanely multifaceted. And this felt like the most organic evolution of everything that I had been doing and thinking and eating and talking about and wanting. And I pitched it to Emily, and she, crazy enough, had been feeling the exact same way.
But you know, from covering this industry for so long, you know how many failures there are, the no-shows, the people who steal from you, the contractors that don't show up, the overbilling, the way over budget stuff, and yet you still jumped into this.
Well, maybe we're optimistic to a fault, but, you know, to do anything in life, whether it's building a restaurant or baking a pie, you can't focus on all the things that might go wrong. You have to focus on what you want to do and why you think it will be delightful, and the pleasure and experiences it will bring to you and the people you care about and the people you don't even know. You know, if you just sat there and thought, oh, my oven could be too hot, or this, you know, I could put too much sweetener in it, or like the crust couldn't come together, you'd never bake a freaking pie. So we definitely didn't focus on all the things that could go wrong. But what we did focus on, which really informed this project, is everything that we thought could use a little bit or even a lot of changing and renovation in the culinary industry. So in addition to observing trends in food and design and service and cocktails and wine over the course of 10 years, we also observed a lot of things that we didn't love about the culture of restaurants, and sort of tendencies, operational tendencies, systemic tendencies, even just sort of values and characteristics in restaurants. And we wouldn't have done this project if we didn't have a desire to try to change some things. So we didn't focus on, you know, what a pain in the butt it was going to be to deal with our crazy contractor and to do, you know, a gut renovation of a giant space, and how hard it was going to be to find whatever it is, kitchen staff. But we didn't focus on that. We knew that was all coming in. We knew we would figure it out because people figure it out every day. But what we did focus on was what we thought we could bring, not just in terms of food, though we do have a very distinct perspective on that, and we were filling, you know, what we saw as a little bit of a hole in the food world, but also what we could bring in terms of just creating a business that really focused on health and respect and happiness in an industry that's not famed for espousing or embracing those values and priorities.
And you were just saying that you think the entire city benefits when chefs or entrepreneurs from other places come here to open up something. You don't necessarily have to be homegrown to make the scene better, but you were saying people from different places, different climates, maybe make the scene better?
Yeah, I think when people actually relocate here, actually are moving here, you know, and make this a home and devote themselves to creative entrepreneurial work here, it only makes the city so much stronger. And that's really what's happening. That's what drew us to LA. We saw a couple years ago that people were relocating here and seeing it as a land of opportunity. There's this really amazing manifest destiny moment happening right now, in that, you know, there's room here. It's getting more expensive, but it's not financially crushing to open a business here. There's a lot of room culturally, creatively. People are hungry, and the more people who are populating the city from other places and bringing their perspectives and their ideas to it, the better it gets. And we're seeing it all over in every realm, in art, in design, in food.
You were saying, like, your experience a lot of time was in the Midwest or the East Coast. Again, not to bring up the girls again from Kismet, but they're East Coast trained and they work there. You come here and all of a sudden you realize, wow, I really not only understand the seasons, but I can have anything when I want it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a total Eden. And people coming from all over bringing different perspectives just makes it awesome. I mean, the food that Sarah and Sarah are doing at Kismet is so creative and beautiful and exciting and really, really different than anything else that was here. I think the food that we're doing here, while intensely and sort of naturally Californian, is also different from what we were finding. And in part it's because we have a different perspective. And then with service too, we've gotten a lot of comments from people that the service at Botanica is so warm and kind and thoughtful in a way that feels very different from what they've seen in many places. And I think that is directly because of our experiences in Chicago and New York, and knowing we want to bring a very, very caring style of service to this. And it's not the norm here because this is not a city with a really long or robust history of service professionals. So there's a lot that people can bring, and it's happening in every genre, and it's making the city so amazing.
Heather Sperling, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Steve. Nice to see you.
Coming up, the nation's only Pulitzer Prize-winning food critic takes me to some of his favorite Chinese restaurants in the San Gabriel Valley. Then Rick and I wrap things up. Plus, we'll preview some scenes from next week's show, so stay with us.
Looking for a little extra side dish? Let us know on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at The Feed Podcast.
This episode of the Feed Podcast is brought to you by the Chicago French Market, a European-inspired marketplace in the heart of Chicago. Featuring more than 30 specialty vendors, the market offers fresh ingredients for cooking at home, delicious grab-and-go options for any meal of the day, or even a simple picnic or office party.
I'm Yola, and this is Les Fleurs. We sell custom-made bouquets and hand ties. We also have a wonderful line of unusual gift products for the most part. I sell in the food market. I too sell food, but it's food for the soul.
Located in Chicago's West Loop with two entrances, 131 North Clinton and 118 North Canal, next to the Ogilvy Transportation Center. Covered parking is free for an hour with a $20 purchase. Open Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. until 7:30 at night. Saturdays, 8:30 until 5:30, plus free Wi-Fi. The Chicago French Market, a taste of Europe in the heart of the Midwest.
Authentic fish tacos traditionally come from one place, Mexico's Baja Peninsula. In towns like Ensenada and San Felipe, fresh fish is battered and fried, then topped with crunchy cabbage crema, fresh avocado, and vibrant salsa, all tucked into warm corn tortillas.
You know better than everybody. I mean, this area down in San Diego, down on the way to the coast, I mean, that can be really special.
It's so beautiful, and the food is so good. I can't wait to get down there and eat these
There's
fish
a lot
tacos.
of competition. You know,
Yeah.
Oscar's Mexican Seafood started out as a food truck in Tijuana, became a tiny shack in Pacific Beach, which is just north of San Diego. Now they've got 5 locations in and around the city, including the latest in Encinitas. Everything's fresh, never frozen, and they make their salsas and agua frescas fresh on site each day. For more information, visit oscarsmexicanseafood.com.
Still not full? Feast on the photos, recipes, and be a part of the conversation on Twitter at The Feed Podcast.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. We're talking about Los Angeles today, and so far we spent a fair amount of time discussing downtown and Silver Lake, but I couldn't very well visit L.A. and not talk to the major domo of local food critics, Jonathan Gold. Gold is the only food critic to ever receive a Pulitzer Prize for his work, and more recently he was featured in a documentary entitled City of Gold, which followed him around while doing his job. He spends a lot of time in the small, undiscovered mom-and-pop places, taquerias and noodle shops, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention you two have, well, a little bit of history, not unlike my correspondence with Graham Elliott here in Chicago.
Okay, so you learn your lessons here, and someone posted that at a public presentation, he said something negative about me and my work, and they misquoted him but I reacted directly to him. So that's what you should never do.
Okay.
Actually find out what he really said before you sort of blow up in a public way, which is kind of what I did on Twitter. So I think the world of Jonathan's work, he has done some amazing stuff. And more than any person in the United States, he has shined a light on the small ethnic eateries, these families that are cooking really great food. And he describes their food in a full-blown way. So it's almost like reading a novel when you read his stuff, because he is so evocative with his words, and I love that.
So you're saying you wouldn't pull a Graham Elliott and ask him to be thrown out of the restaurant if he came to Chicago?
No, okay. I would definitely not that. We kissed and made up.
All right,
within a few hours, we kissed and made
okay.
up.
All right. Well, I called him up, asked him if he'd be interested in meeting in the San Gabriel Valley.
Did you tell him I was a co-host?
I told him you were a co-host.
And
yeah.
he didn't
flinch.
No,
it's all good. Asked if he'd be interested in meeting in San Gabriel, which is home to a lot of ethnic Chinese restaurants, and he was game. One note, he was fighting both a high temperature, a cough, and a sore throat, so his voice may sound a little bit strained, but we managed to have a conversation over the course of 3 different restaurants. We began at a place called Number 1 Juicy Dumpling.
The San Gabriel Valley is vast, probably 20 miles long, and there are sections you can go. You can drive for 10 miles at a time without being out of sight of a Chinese language sign.
One of the things we're eating today are dumplings. You particularly like the xiaolongbao, the soup dumplings that they serve here. How come?
Xiaolongbao are really popular in Los Angeles. It's not a Shanghai-style restaurant. It's a Wuxi-style restaurant.
What is Wuxi? Where is that?
It's a region about an hour out of Shanghai on a lake. One of the characteristics of Wuxi cooking is that everything is sweet. There's sugar and so you'll find that the broth in the dumplings is sweeter than you're used to. Sweet and sour crispy eel is one thing that we're going to be having. Wuxi spare ribs is something you can get in sort of any Eastern Chinese restaurant.
As you drive in your truck around LA, and I am struck by how many malls there are here where there's just beautiful hidden gems everywhere in Los Angeles, how do you decide, that awning looks good, that neon sign looks good? I see a lot of expats waiting in line. How do you decide where to go eat?
In the San Gabriel Valley, at least, I end up trying everything. And I've been writing about the restaurants here since the mid-1980s. We're right now in Focus Plaza or San Gabriel Square, depending on how you want, which is sort of the grandest of at least the restaurant malls in the area. It's anchored by a 99 Ranch grocery store, and there's a Focus department store. At any one given time, there are 18, 19 places to eat. Because the competition is so high, almost everything tends to be good.
You've just been nibbling a little bit here, and the xiaolongbao is exceptional. I rarely get this in Chicago. How does this rank for you?
The skin is a little bit thick, but it's homey. There's not much liquid. The flavor of the broth is good.
Generous broth.
Yes, and there's just a little bit of sweetness. I'd say if there's any fault, a tiny fault, the meat might be like a little bit dry. Maybe you could put a tiny bit more fat in there, but it's
nice. As long as you're careful lifting it out of the steamer into your spoon, biting the top, sucking out the juice, the broth, you're going to be in good shape. Otherwise, it's trouble. As a Chicagoan who covers food, one of the things that always bugs me when people talk about Chicago is, we're deep dish pizza and hot dogs and Italian beef, and that's the end of the story. And of course, the city's progressed over the last few years. What are the things that do you think people from outside of LA still think of this town incorrectly when it comes to food? And what would you want them to know if they're coming here to eat?
So I think one of the great things about Los Angeles is it's just stunning, super fertile diversity. And if you're not getting in your car or getting in your Uber and going to places all around the city as opposed to within a few miles of your hotel, you're missing out. I mean, we have the Koreatown here is the biggest concentration of Koreans outside Korea.
It's stunning. I mean, driving through it the other day, I could not believe how vast it was, and just mind-boggling how many places I wanted to try.
I've written 2 like super thick guides to Koreatown restaurants, and I know that I haven't scratched the surface of it.
You did tell me separately Park's Barbecue you like for carby and banchan.
Park's Barbecue is the best of the barbecue places. It's expensive. It's expensive as a regular steakhouse. It may be self-serving, but every year I do 101 best restaurants in Los Angeles that you can find on the LATimes.com site. And it's pretty inclusive of everything from the super high-end places like Providence and Spago down to a place in a far-flung suburb that serves lamb barbacoa exactly the way they make it in Texcoco.
Went to a place yesterday with a friend of mine who lives here, and of course I saw the counterintelligence framed up on the wall that you had written 7 years ago, La Cevicheria on Pico. Families from Guatemala, they do the bloody clam thing, and just delicious. Fish tacos, octopus and shrimp ceviche. That is a find.
Did you bring a bottle of rum?
Did not bring a bottle of rum. You didn't tell me I was supposed to do that.
You're not technically allowed to, but it's sort of a really good place to bring a good bottle of rum. You should bring Guatemala rum and maybe some limes, and drink daiquiris and eat the bloody clams and the spicy ceviche, and you're in heaven.
So Jonathan, we walked across the street now, a rather busy street, and into another strip mall, a double-decker strip mall. What is the name of this place?
We're in a restaurant called Mian.
One of the things we ordered here was a cold noodle, which is just delicious. I can taste that sort of that numbing, the Szechuan peppercorn to it. But you got a couple other things here. What else did you order?
I got the chow shou, which are, I guess, the traditional dumplings of Sichuan. They're sort of floppy skin, a really nice firm like pork force meat. In this particular version comes in chili oil, so it's super spicy.
When they asked you how spicy, your response just was hilarious, like extra hot, very spicy. So they're pretty hot.
They're very hot. I mean, if you're going to do a job, do a job.
Now, when you come to a place like this, and whether you discover it, you hear about it, you write about it, does part of you feel like, it was my little joint, it was my little gem, and now I can't, as Yogi Berra would say, it's so popular nobody goes there anymore?
No, my job is to tell people about what I find. Yeah, my job isn't to worry about a restaurant being swamped or not. And the lines here are often very long, but we walked right in.
We did walk right in, and they closed at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, just FYI for people coming to Los Angeles. Do you feel like you've got one more place in you after this, or have we eaten enough for the afternoon?
We'll see how we do.
Okay, we'll see how we do. All right. We've driven about a mile now to a place called, is it Kang Kang?
Kang Kang Food Court.
There is a long steam counter here with all kinds of savory items. A couple of teas, boba teas, and a little frozen section of things to go. We are having a couple of different dumplings here. It looks like xiaolongbao, the steamed dumpling with some broth inside, as well as this dumpling over here. Explain this one that's crispy on the bottom.
It's a Shanghai-style dumpling called Shenzhenbao. There's a place in Shanghai that's super famous for it. It's a soup dumpling in that it's filled with soup and meat. It's a little bit of a raised dough. It's not quite the flat dough of xiaolongbao or traditional dumpling.
Twice the size of a typical xiaolongbao. It's pretty hefty. There's a lot of juice in there.
There is. When you bite into it, it spurts across the table. It's also pan-fried, so it's crispy on the bottom, and there's traditionally a few sesame seeds scattered on the top.
If you were to come out here, you first of all, you can't come to the San Gabriel Valley without first consulting Jonathan Gold's work, because he's done all the legwork already. You were saying you come out here a couple days a week, or you spend a couple of days a week just sort of exploring, but in terms of coming to explore a neighborhood like the San Gabriel Valley, how often do you get to come out here and actually spend some time, boots on the ground, discovering stuff?
I probably in the San Gabriel Valley twice a week, which may be excessive, but I live just 8 miles north in Pasadena, so easier to get to than some places are.
But do same rules apply in terms of how you decide if you're going to review a restaurant when you visit 3-4 times before you write a review? Same thing at a sort of a cheap eats level? You go visit a couple times first just to make sure that it's the right thing?
I actually never think of food as cheap eats. I mean, my rule is basically they have to do one thing better than any other restaurant in Los Angeles. Yeah, I mean, I'll often come back to, Chinese or Vietnamese or Thai places way more times than I would another place. I mean, A, because it's less expensive and because my editor doesn't mind as much, but B, because the menus tend to be gigantic, encyclopedic, and if it's coming from an area whose food I don't necessarily know as well as I might, I'll have to go until I feel that I understand it to write about it. The idea of just, parachuting once into a restaurant and writing a review I can't even imagine how you would do that.
Well, listen, I appreciate your time today. I know you're a little under the weather, and you schlepped out here to the valley to meet us today to eat, and I really appreciate your time, and it's just been a real pleasure. Jonathan Gold, thanks so much.
Thank you.
So obviously the guy is such a pro eater, and pushing through the fever and the temperature and the coughing. We edited out a lot of the coughs so you didn't have to hear them. But he was game, and he was,
That's remarkable.
The interesting thing about him was that, he is an encyclopedia, and he's got a photographic memory, clearly. We're walking down the street en route to one of these places, and he says, that place over there known for their known for the rice dumplings. From a certain region, though, and then these guys are more Taiwanese. That guy over there is known for his soups, Every restaurant he knows the story about it. I can't even do that in Chicago.
He is remarkable at his ability to just pull out these arcane facts, and that's obviously what makes him so great.
And if you go to L.A., it's a good idea to maybe pick up his guide in the L.A. Times if he does like a 100 best
the 100
eats or
best.
something. Yeah.
I've used it many times, and it's a really great resource.
Good. Well, coming up next week, a challenge that will most likely be a wild, not a farm-raised one.
You see this preparation throughout Italy. It's called tagliata, usually done with beef. And tagliata means sliced in Italy. And you would slightly grill the steak on both sides, usually reserved for steak, and then slice and then put back on like an oven-proof or burner-proof pan and sort of finish the cooking with a little bit of salad on top. So I'm going to do that with salmon today.
The James Beard Award-winning chef of Spiaggia here in Chicago stops by to accept our salmon challenge. He and I get 5 extra ingredients to make an easy weeknight meal in 15 minutes or less. That's next week on the show. You can always contact us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at The Feed Podcast. There's another plus. You can check out our ingredient challenges, get recipes, and other information about previous shows by simply visiting our website, thefeedpodcast.com. And don't forget to subscribe and rate our show on iTunes. Be sure to follow me at Rick_Bayless.
And I'm at Steve Dolinsky. More information about all the places we talked about in LA on our website as well. Linnea Dominic's our intern. Max Dolinsky supervised today's music. Bureaucratic wrote and performed our theme song. And the Feed Podcast is edited by Matt Cunningham at Truthful Enthusiasm. Whether you're an individual or institution, get your story online with truthfulenthusiasm.com. Thanks for listening, everybody.